ninth grade. I am on here because I want to help you guys with the two poems that, well, I gave you three technically, but I want to help you with the two assignments that I gave you for this week. Mostly because Mirror by Sylvia Plath, it's a little vague, and there is a little bit more work that I wanted you to do with it. And then for the compare and contrast, it's two wildly different authors. It's Edgar Allan Poe and Langston Hughes, and they're both talking about dreams. So those are kind of hard too. So I just wanted to hop on here and kind of help you guys with those. For the TPCAST, just want to remind you guys, this is all analysis. So this is your own thing. Like, it's not like you're gonna be right or wrong. I just want to make sure that you're trying your best to do the steps accurately. So just making sure you're trying to really look all over in the poem for what you're looking for. Just trying to make it detailed. It doesn't have to be right. I just really want you guys to try it, because it is hard that I'm not there, because it's kind of like I have to give you the answers because it's just not the same. So you guys just have to do the best that you can. I'm sure you'll be fine, but I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about these poems because they're kind of hard. So last week's poems were easy breezy. The Silverstein one, it's definitely one of my favorites to start out with. So I'm sure that one was simple. I did do a YouTube video for that one. And then I also talked about the Maya Angelou poem. It's very famous, and I'm sure you guys pretty much understood what she was trying to get across. And that was kind of the point, is that it's one of those poems where it's like you have to know what this poem is. So now you do, because I gave it to you to make sure you guys definitely knew what it was. So hopefully those two are fine. We're gonna first start with your TPCAST number 3, which is called Mirror by Sylvia Plath. For those of you that are familiar with Sylvia Plath, love her poetry. I haven't read The Bell Jar all the way through, but I do love her poems. Sylvia Plath was the author in the 1950s where she committed suicide by putting her head in her oven. So that was her. So if you guys have heard of that before, that was Sylvia Plath. So I don't know if that helps at all, but that is who she is. So for mirror specifically, what we're seeing now is an extended metaphor. So the mirror is a metaphor for a variety of things that she describes going on in her life. So there's lots of imagery, like I'm just reading the worksheet. So it's got focus on similes, metaphors, imagery, and symbolism. So it's really all using images to try to create and personify the mirror. So that's kind of what we're focusing on. So I wanted you guys to label those 4 things and try to locate them. I'll help you with that. Do a regular TPCAST, and then I had a couple questions for you guys at the end. So we'll go through the basic TPCAST. I'll kind of point out where the metaphors and the images and the symbolism and whatnot, like where that is represented, and then do some TP casting, and then we'll kind of go over the questions. So Mirror by Sylvia Plath, for when you guys are doing your T for TP cast, I would just describe a mirror to the best of your ability. So what we know about mirrors are that everyone probably has one at some point. They show you your reflection. Vampires aren't supposed to have a reflection. I don't know. You're not supposed to see ghosts in mirrors either, because I don't think they have a reflection. What else do we know? Funhouse mirrors are weird and they distort your image. That's all I have for now about mirrors. So the title is before you read the poem. So that's everything I know about mirrors. So let's go ahead and read the poem now for our paraphrasing so that we can kind of figure out what's going on. Mirror by Sylvia Plath. I'm reading it on my phone. I am silver and exact. I have no preconceptions. Whatever I see, I swallow immediately just as it is, unmisted by love or dislike. I am not cruel, only truthful, the eye of a little god, four-cornered. Most of the time I meditate on the opposite wall. It is pink with speckles. I have looked at it for so long I think it is a part of my heart. But it flickers. Faces in darkness separate us over and over. Now I am a lake. A woman bends over me, searching my reaches for what she really is. Then she turns to those liars, the candles or the moon. I see her back and reflect it faithfully. She rewards me with tears in an agitation of hands. I am important to her. She comes and goes. Each morning it is her face that replaces the darkness. In me she has drowned a young girl, and in me an old woman rises toward her day after day like a terrible fish. So it's broken into 2 stanzas. I'm sure you guys figured this out, but mirror is the title, and you can tell that the point of view is first person. So the mirror is actually the speaker. So the mirror is the speaker. You can probably tell because it says I am silver and exact, and you're like, it's a mirror. So the mirror is the speaker. So the mirror is the speaker. It is talking about what it does, its job. So it's broken into two stanzas. The first stanza, it is a mirror hanging on a wall, because it says that across from it is a wall that is pink with speckles. So it's just a regular mirror hanging on the wall. And then for stanza 2, it is not a traditional mirror. It is a lake, which shows your reflection. So it is still a mirror doing its job, but it's different. So the first one is man-made. The second one is natural. It is a lake. So for your paraphrase, it's pretty simple. It's just like, it's from the point of view of a mirror. The mirror is telling us what it does. The mirror is telling us about its day to day. And, in the second stanza, you can say a woman is introduced, and the woman is important. So there's a woman in the second stanza, and, how she reacts to the mirror is important. So that's basic paraphrase. It's the point of view of a mirror. There's two different kinds, the first stanza and the second stanza. And then in the second stanza, we meet a woman, and, she's going to be important as well. The next thing we're going to move on to is connotation. So like I said before, connotation is one part of a word's meaning. So the first part of a word's meaning is just the dictionary definition. So like what it literally is. The connotation is the emotional connection that we have to a word, the figurative connection, not the literal meaning, the figurative meaning. So for connotation, you're just looking for words that you think are important. So anything that really stands out that, because, like in this one, I said we're looking for similes, metaphors, imagery, and symbolism. So you just you want to go towards those things. So the really obvious one is that like a terrible fish is a simile, right at the end. Like a terrible fish is a simile. Write that down. And then at the beginning, some of the words the mirror uses to describe itself: silver, exact, no preconceptions, unmisted by love or dislike, not cruel, truthful. Eye of a little god is a metaphor. So is she saying, the mirror is saying that it is the eye of a little god four-cornered? So eye of a little god is a metaphor. It doesn't use like or as. It's just saying this is what I am. So metaphor, write that down. So the eye of a little god four-cornered. And then it talks about the wall that's pink with speckles. So that's a big image. We don't really know what it means yet, but it's an image that we have. The mirror says that it's become part of my heart. So the mirror, like I said before, the mirror is being personified. So it's actually taking on these human-like qualities. The mirror says that it can swallow, which is a human activity. It says that it has a heart. So the mirror is being personified, write that down, by some of the words that we're seeing in the first stanza. So the mirror and the symbolism of the mirror is probably more effective in the second stanza. But anyway, the second stanza, I'm a lake. The woman is someone you'll probably want to write down. It says, searching my reaches for what she really is. So she's staring into the lake, I guess, for a long time, I'm assuming. I don't know. I didn't write this, but this is just my assumption. So I'm assuming she's just looking to try to figure out what she is. And then it says that she turns to those liars, the candles, or the moon. So the candles and moon are a light source, and a light source always makes a shadow. So here I think she's talking about shadows and her appearance in different light sources. So it's kind of all about how the woman sees herself. The mirror said that it's exact. It has no preconceptions. It doesn't judge. It literally reflects what it sees. So the mirror is saying that these light sources are liars because it distorts your appearance. It shows you in different light what you look like. So I'm sure you guys have seen all those things that are here's what I look like in different lighting with a different camera lens, and it's crazy because you look super different. Mirrors don't do that. So she's saying mirrors literally reflect what they see, but there are other things that don't do the same thing. They give you a distorted view of yourself. So that's kind of interesting that she mentions these different light sources. So the mirror does what it does. It says it reflects faithfully. She rewards me with tears and an agitation of hands. An agitation of hands is when you're going like that. So the woman is clearly reacting negatively, which is probably, you can put that in attitude, which is the next thing that we're going to do. I am important to her. She comes and goes. Each morning it is her face that replaces the darkness. And now these last two lines are probably the most significant. In me, she has drowned a young girl, which, she hasn't actually drowned. It's just a metaphor. And in me, an old woman rises toward her day after day like a terrible fish, which is your big simile. And then So that's probably all I'll do for connotation right now. And then we've got attitude. Attitude is the way the poem feels. So whether it's like positive, negative, whether it's, whether it's like sad, optimistic, angry, stoic, you know what I'm saying? So you just have to decide like how the poem feels. The mirror as a narrator is, there's not a lot of feeling going on there. So like the mirror said, it just reflects back what it sees. So it doesn't really have any emotional responses to what's going on. However, by looking at what's happening, we can kind of see what's going on. Like the woman in the second stanza, it says that she is crying and she's kind of like throwing her hands in the air. So obviously like something negative is happening to the woman in the second stanza. That's probably something you can mention. It'd probably be worth it. And then next we have shifts. Shifts are when things change in the poem. So either the paraphrase changes, maybe the attitude changes, different connotation, different types of words. Here, I think there's a pretty obvious shift between the first and second stanza because one is a human-made mirror and the second one is a natural mirror. So I think that's probably important. So that can be a good shift that you can look at. And then you have title and theme. So the questions, question 1 says, how many different things does the mirror symbolize as described by the author? So you have to decide, kind of what does the mirror mean. You can say the mirror is, it says it's like the eye of a little god four-cornered. So maybe you can say that like the mirror is all-knowing. The mirror is a lake. You can talk about how it kind of represents this woman. It says it drowns a young girl and in me an old woman, blah, blah, blah. So the woman's seeing herself age. So you can probably talk about that. Number 2, it says what images does the author use to enhance the symbol's meaning? So you just have to look at your connotation section and kind of talk about what images you think are the most important. And then the third one says the mirror is personified in this poem. What's the mirror's tone like? So it's kind of what I already talked about. Like the mirror is, has a very stoic tone, really does not have any judgment. It is literally just telling you what it sees. So it's, doesn't really have any type of connotation itself. But then I asked you, what's the mirror's attitude towards itself, the world around it, and then toward the woman? So you have to decide how it's responding to kind of everything around it. So I know that's kind of a lot, especially with the TPCASTT. So when you're answering the questions, it doesn't have to be super long. It's just something that you want to look at because this poem is all about extended metaphors and the symbolism of the mirror. So I just want to make sure you guys kind of take some time to look at that. And then your next TPCASTT is a compare and contrast. Like I said, it's 2 authors that are wildly different. You have Edgar Allan Poe. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Edgar Allan Poe. He did The Raven, of course. He did The Telltale Heart, where the heart's beating onto the floorboard and the guy like goes crazy and rips it up. He did Cask of Amontillado, where he bricks that dude into the wall of the cellar and just leaves him there to die. So I'm sure you guys are familiar with Edgar Allan Poe. The next author is Langston Hughes, who talks about dreams. Langston Hughes is one of my favorite poets ever. You guys are going to be doing a little essay over Langston Hughes, but he is a Black American author, and he was the very first Black author to ever be paid to write. He was a big component of the Harlem Renaissance, which was when Black authors and other people of color moved to Harlem, and they did like a whole art scene where they did cultural art from their different backgrounds. So Langston Hughes is the bomb. I'm sure you guys are familiar with who Edgar Allan Poe is. So for both of these, I wanted you guys to do a TPCASTT for both. Like I said, it doesn't have to be super long or anything, but I wanted you to do the TPCASTT. And then I do have 2 questions that I want you guys to answer for this poem. I did put that I wanted it to be a paragraph with 1 quote, per paragraph. If you can't get there, that's okay. I do want you to think about the questions though. So the questions that I have, number 1, it says write the meaning of each poem. The thematic similarity is dreams. So it says, what are they saying about dreams and how do they say this? So you kind of want to compare like what is going on with the idea of dreams. And then number 2, compare and contrast these ideas, how and why are they different? So they're both about dreams. So we're trying to figure out, what are the different things that they say about dreams. So let's read by Edgar Allan Poe. This is called A Dream Within a Dream. It's very dramatic. There's a lot of exclamation points. So A Dream Within a Dream, if you're going to do a TPCASTT, every time I always think of Inception. I'm sure you guys have seen that movie with Leo DiCaprio where he spins the top and he like has to keep going in dreams. I think of that every single time, and that is always what I write when I write title. That's what I think of. You don't have to write that, but that's always what I think of. So let's go ahead and read this. Take this kiss upon the brow, and in parting from you now, thus much let me avow. You are not wrong who deem that my days have been a dream. Yet if hope has flown away in a night or in a day, in a vision or in none, is it therefore the less gone? All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream. So he's like kind of having an existential crisis. I stand amid the roar of a surf-tormented shore, and I hold within my hand grains of the golden sand. How few! Yet how they creep through my fingers to the deep, while I weep, while I weep. Oh God, can I not grasp them with a tighter clasp? Oh God, can I not save one from the pitiless wave? It is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream. So, existential crisis. There's a lot of exclamation points. There's like a lot of things happening in this poem. For the paraphrase, just like what's literally happening in the poem, there's 2 stanzas. So the first stanza is that he seems to be parting from someone he loves because there's a kiss upon the brow. He says, "You are not wrong who deem that my days have been a dream." So don't really know what that means, but it seems that he's parting from someone. He says, if hope has flown away, is it therefore the less gone? All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream. So he's kind of losing his grasp on reality. And then the second stanza, we have a much more vivid image. He's standing on the beach and sand, he's holding it, but it's sliding in between his fingers, because it's like sliding out from his fingers. He says, it's a surf-tormented shore I hold within my hand, grains of golden sand. He says, how few, yet how they creep through my fingers to the deep while I weep. He's crying, holding sand, watching it fall onto the shore. It's not funny, but it kind of is. And then he says, can I not grasp them with a tighter clasp? And he says, can I not save them from the pitiless wave? So he's kind of like flipping out because he's holding this sand and it's falling in between his fingers, and he's trying really hard to hold it so that it doesn't have to fall back into the sea, but he can't. He cannot keep the sand from falling back into the ocean. So he's kind of like freaking out. And then he says, is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream? So for connotation, I would probably point out where he uses all of the interesting punctuation. So he uses a lot of question marks, exclamation points. He's got some semicolons. He has an M dash. So I would look at those. It's a lot more punctuation than we've ever had. So he uses tons of punctuation here to kind of describe, kind of like his torment of, this dream situation. So he uses punctuation to show kind of what's going on through him, like that he's like panicking. Like I said, he's like having a crisis. So he uses a ton of punctuation there. I would also talk about the metaphor in the second stanza for the sand. What does the sand represent? He says that he can't stop it from falling through his fingers and disappearing back into the ocean. So it's, of course, it's a metaphor for something. So you can kind of think about that. For the attitude, like I said, he is losing it. So for the attitude, he is clearly questioning what's going on around him. He says that things are dreams, which is probably a disconnection from reality. I don't know. So probably something like that'll help. For shifts, there are 2 stanzas. You could just try to figure out what you think the differences or similarities between those 2 stanzas are, if you want. So you can kind of talk about what different things you think are happening in those 2, and that might help. And then you have title and theme. So for Edgar Allan Poe's poem, this one's definitely harder than Langston Hughes' poem. For Edgar Allan Poe's poem, he's having a crisis. He is wondering, if things drift away, are they really ever gone? And he says, is reality really just a dream within a dream? He's kind of having a difficulty grasping his reality. He is noticing that things are, like with the sand thing, he's noticing things are slipping away. Sand is also very common when you think of an hourglass. It's common for the passage of time. So those are probably some things that you can consider when he talks about what dreams represent. He is not having a good time. Like he's like, is everything a dream? And he's like kind of spiraling. So for him, dreams are a mess. And then we'll go to Langston Hughes. His is called Dream Variations, is the title of his poem. I love this poem, but I love Langston Hughes, so I'm biased. So it's called Dream Variations. For the title, variations are types, so you can just say, he's talking about different types of dreams that he has probably, but I'm going to just jump right into the poem. To fling my arms wide in some place of the sun, to whirl and to dance till the white day is done, then rest at cool evening beneath a tall tree while night comes on gently, dark like me, that is my dream. To fling my arms wide in the face of the sun, dance, whirl, whirl, till the quick day is done. Rest at pale evening, a tall, slim tree. Night coming tenderly, black like me. So I love this poem. It's definitely easier to understand, and I love the way it sounds too. The way that he set up his meter for this is really good. So I love the way it sounds when you read it out loud. But for him, he has some dreams here. For his paraphrase, he gives us a little story of what's going on in his dream. He says he's flinging his arms wide in some place of the sun. He's whirling around until the day is done, and then he rests beneath a tree, and then white comes on gently, dark like me. That is my dream. So the first stanza, he describes his dream. That's basically what's happening. We'll get more into it at Connotation, but for paraphrase, he's describing his dream where he dances during the day and then he sleeps at night, and then he says night comes on tenderly. Obviously, dark like me is like a very important image. We'll get there though. Second stanza says to fling my arms wide in the face of the sun, and here he uses exclamation just like Poe does. He says dance, whirl, whirl. So he also is is elated. So instead of him being like freaking out, he's just elated because you can see that the words that he's using are dancing and whirling. So like he's elated, and he's just doing activities. So he's using these exclamation points, but he still uses them. So that's a little comparison there. Till the quick day is done, rest at pale evening, a tall slim tree, night coming tenderly, black like me. So the second stanza is like exactly the same as the first stanza, but with his connotation, you can tell that he changes the words that he uses. So even though the stanzas are explaining the same thing, the way that they are described are very different. So let's move on to connotation. So for the first one, he said he wants to fling his arms wide in some place of the sun. So flinging your arms wide is usually like, an expression of freedom, like woohoo. So he wants to fling his arms and he wants to be in the sun, kind of like what we read from Silverstein's poem. Sun is technically positive. If you're in the sun, that's usually a good thing. He says till the white day. So he describes the day as white and he describes the night as dark. So, like I said, he's a Harlem Renaissance writer for Black cultural experience. He also said in his autobiography that he writes for and about the experiences of Black people. So you can see that we have images of different, of like light and darkness. And it'll all come together. But he says the day is white and he says the night is dark like me. And then he uses exclamation point. Every time he uses an exclamation point, I'd write that down. That is my dream, is what he says. Now, there's a difference between the first and second stanza. So, in the second stanza, he's flinging his arms wide in the face of the sun. So not just someplace, he's actually directly facing the sun. So he's going more in the center. He is facing this gleaming sun instead of just being like wherever. He specifically is like right in front of it. So you can tell it's becoming more intense. And then he says dance, whirl, whirl. So you can tell that his whirling and dancing is becoming more intense as well. So it says till the quick day is done. So we call it a quick day instead of a white day. So he's changing the description there. And then he said rest at pale evening. So this time the evening is pale. The evening is pale. Instead, before he said it was dark like me. But then he says that night comes tenderly black like me. So he describes the black night as tender. He says the tree is tall and slim. He says he's resting at pale evening. So these are all good, positive, chill words. So if you look at the connotation there, when you move to attitude, you can tell that he's reacting very differently to Edgar Allan Poe, whose dreams are like freaking him out. For Hughes, he clearly is dreaming of very similar to the Silverstein imagery in Where the Sidewalk Ends, but you can tell that he wants to be free. He wants to just dance around during the day and be in the sun, and then he wants to just lay down in nature. The night comes on tenderly black like me, and he can relax in the evening. So for his dream, there's a lot of freedom included, which I'm sure you're like, oh, I get it now, because like I said, almost all of his literature was written for and about Black people. So he says that he wants to have this like freedom experience is what he wants to feel. But the way he describes it is more natural and dreamlike than, some of our more obvious poems that he has written, which we'll go over. So for attitude, it's like definitely good. It feels positive. And then we've got our shifts. I would definitely point out the shift between the first and second stanza because of the intensity that he brings in the second stanza with his choice of words. So I would do that. Then we go back to the title, and then we go back to our theme. So you can tell that both of these authors are talking about dreams in a different way. They're both expressing what a dream means to them. Obviously, Edgar Allan Poe was a Gothic writer from the 1800s, and Langston Hughes was in, you know, the 1940s. So like super different time periods, very different purposes of writing. So obviously you can bring that into your analysis as well, but just try to compare and contrast the differences that they feel with their dreams. I know you're probably like, I don't think anything is the same, but you're gonna have to try your best to see if you can find things that are similar. Like I said, the way that they use punctuation, the connotation that they use, and the way that they use the words that they have, you know, what they end up representing, you know, blah blah blah. So do the best you can. I did say I wanted paragraphs, but if you can't do paragraphs, it's fine. Like, you just write whatever you can. But I really hope this was helpful. You guys also have a song analysis that I'll go over in another video. That one's pretty easy. You just pick any song that you like, and then you just get to analyze it just for fun. So it's pretty easy, but I'll go over it. You guys also have vocab this week, Unit 14. So don't forget to do Thursday. And then you've got DOL. And I think that's it. So I hope this was helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions, but I'll see you later.